All right, here's a question for you as you wake up this Monday morning. When it comes to communication with work, are you the kind of employee who needs to answer emails or check in after work hours? Well, today, Australia became the latest nation to protect workers' right to disconnect. It's all in the name of work-life balance, and Marianne is on this one for us. Marianne, neither you nor myself have our phones with us.
No,
we've already disconnected
here. We're making progress.
Walk us through this new policy.
Well, those three words, right? Work-life balance. It's what everyone wants. They want some work-life balance. They don't want to burn out. And now you have the permission to hit ignore. In Australia, starting today, any employee who works for a company with more than 15 workers, they're not required to answer those calls, texts, emails from their bosses during unpaid work hours. So that's after you clock out. Of course, we've got to answer them while we're on the job, but afterwards, it's all about having those boundaries, and that's what so many employees want to have without the guilt. And it's also to cut down on those unpaid work hours. We know that in Australia, there was a survey by the Australia Institute that found that Australians worked on average 281 unpaid overtime hours. That's worth about 130 billion Australian dollars. So a lot of workers really happy about this. On the other hand, some employers are concerned about what this could mean about a potential communication ban outside of work hours, because there are some workers who are required to answer their phones every now and then, depending on what their actual role is. But here's some reaction from Australia, because it is actually surprisingly quite mixed.
I think it's actually really important that we have laws like this. We spend so much of our time connected to our phones, connected to our emails all day, and I think that it's really hard to switch off as it is.
We are professionals, we're well paid, we're expected to deliver, and we feel we have to deliver 24 hours a day if we have to. So the phone's always on, the computer's always on, and we're working.
See, some people don't mind being tethered to work morning to night, as long as
that sounds like a boss.
As long as that check is clearing. Oh, that's what I wondered. Is he in management? But interesting to look at just how many countries have now adopted similar laws, because there are now more than 24 countries around the world, mostly in Latin America as well as in Europe. And France was actually the first country to put a law like this in place in 2017, and so many other countries have now followed suit.
Well, it's not just the international context. Even here in Canada, we have an example. Let's start with Ontario.
Yeah, Ontario, the first province in the country to put something like this in place, this right to disconnect. Back in 2023, employers who had more than 25 employees were required to have a policy, a written policy in place with this right to disconnect for their employees. So really giving the power back to employees to just silence the phone, hit ignore. It's just one button. It's so freeing. And also, we know that back in April, the federal government in the 2024 budget also announced a plan to have a right to disconnect plan for its federally regulated employees across the country. That's about 500,000 employees. We know at the time the finance minister said it's just unhealthy to be available all the time. You've got to even create that wall. And if the federal government's saying that it's okay, why not? Of course, that impacts several sectors, telecommunications, transportation, the list goes on. And the federal government also earmarking $4.2 million over the next 5 years to make amendments to the Canada Labour Code. So what does this mean? It really is up to the employee now, because as we heard in Australia, some people are saying, even with this law, I'm still answering the phone. Others,
if they could only get us to disconnect from social media or something. I could use some help for a law on that one.
You might need some financial incentive, depending on who you are.
No kidding. All right, Marianne, thank you very much.